If you are moved by stories of overcoming adversity and new beginnings, subscribe to the channel and give it a like so you don't miss a single chapter of this journey. The air in Harmony Creek, Colorado, had always tasted of pine and possibility. For Ava, it was the only air she had ever truly known. She was a third-grade teacher at the local elementary school, a job that felt less like a profession and more like a calling. Her life was a collection of small, cherished moments, carefully curated within the walls of the little blue house on Juniper Lane. It wasn't a large house, but it was a fortress of memory passed down from the grandmother who had raised her. Every scuff on the hardwood floor told a story. The chipped teacup on the windowsill had been her grandmother's favorite. The walls were a gallery of her students' artwork, vibrant and chaotic expressions of joy that Ava valued more than any masterpiece. Her world was simple, ordered, and deeply loved. Mornings began with the enthusiastic nudging of Buster, her golden retriever mix, a rescue with mismatched ears and a heart full of boundless affection. After their walk through the dew-kissed trails bordering the woods, she would grade papers at the old oak dining table, the scent of fresh coffee filling the cozy space. Her life wasn't about grand ambitions. It was about nurturing roots, both in the young minds she taught and in the community that had cradled her since birth. That Tuesday started like any other. The late summer sun beat down with an unusual ferocity, and a persistent, dry wind whispered through the aspen trees, making them rustle with an anxious energy. Ava had stopped at Miller's General Store after school to pick up milk and dog food. At the counter, a colorful sign for the Powerball jackpot caught her eye. It was an astronomical number, the kind of figure that felt more like a concept than actual money. On a whim, driven by a flicker of playful fantasy, she bought a single ticket. She let the machine pick the numbers, a quick pick for a daydream. "You never know," old Mr. Miller would said with a wink, handing her the slip of paper. She'd laughed, tucked it into the zippered pocket of her favorite denim jacket hanging in her car, and thought nothing more of it. That jacket was her constant companion, worn for dog walks, trips to the farmer's market, and chilly evenings on her porch. It was as much a part of her routine as brushing her teeth. The smell of smoke started as a faint, distant warning, easily dismissed as a controlled burn or a neighbor's barbecue. But as the afternoon bled into evening, the scent grew acrid and thick, and the sky to the west began to glow with a menacing, unnatural orange. A knot of dread tightened in Ava's stomach. News reports on the local radio station crackled with escalating urgency. A wildfire, sparked by a dry lightning strike in the foothills, was spreading with terrifying speed, fueled by the relentless wind. Harmony Creek was in its path. Then came the frantic chirping of her cell phone, an emergency alert. Level 3 evacuation. Go now. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. The world compressed into a dizzying whirlwind of instinct and adrenaline. Go now. The words echoed in her mind, a drumbeat against the rising symphony of distant sirens. Buster was already whining at the door, sensing her terror. She looked around the living room, her eyes darting from one beloved object to another. Her grandmother's rocking chair, a framed photo of her parents, gone since she was a teenager. The box of letters she'd saved from her first year of teaching. How could she choose? What do you save when everything is a piece of your soul? Her gaze fell on the mantelpiece, on a clumsy clay bird a student had made for her, its wings lopsided but painted with earnest care. She reached for it, her fingers trembling, but a loud percussive homp from outside shook the house, rattling the windows. The orange glow had intensified, casting flickering demonic shadows across her lawn. There was no more time. "Okay, Buster, okay," she whispered, her voice hoarse. She grabbed his leash from the hook by the door. Hanging right next to it was her denim jacket. Without a second thought, she snatched it, her muscle memory taking over. It was the jacket she always took for a walk. They were leaving. This was just a walk, a terrible, terrifying walk away from home. She fumbled with the keys to her car, her mind a blank slate of fear, and bundled the trembling dog into the passenger seat. As she sped down Juniper Lane, joining a frantic procession of headlights, she didn't dare look in the rearview mirror. She couldn't bear to see her little blue house for the last time. The evacuation center was the gymnasium of a high school in a neighboring town, a cavernous space that quickly filled with the shell-shocked residents of Harmony Creek. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, fear, and scorched earth. Families huddled together on cots, children wailed, and adults stared blankly into space, their faces illuminated by the relentless blue light of their phones as they desperately scrolled for updates. Ava found a quiet corner for herself and Buster, wrapping her arms around the dog. His warm body, a solitary comfort in a world that had suddenly turned cold and hostile. She saw familiar faces, each etched with the same hollow disbelief. Then she saw Liam. He was a volunteer firefighter, a broad-shouldered man whose quiet strength had always been a comforting presence in town. His daughter had been in Ava's class 2 years ago. Now his face was smudged with soot, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. He was moving through the crowd, handing out water bottles and offering what little information he had. Their eyes met across the gymnasium, and he gave her a weary, sympathetic nod. He made his way over, crouching down beside her. "Ava, you got out okay?" She could only nod, her throat too tight to speak. "The wind is not letting up," he said, his voice low and grave. "They're doing everything they can, but it's bad. Juniper Lane is right in the thick of it." He didn't need to say more. The unspoken truth hung in the air between them. Her home was likely gone. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "We'll get through this. As a community, we will." He squeezed her shoulder once, before being called away to help an elderly couple. His words were kind, but they offered little solace against the enormity of her loss. The next 2 days were a blur of sleeplessness and grief. Ava and the other evacuees existed in a state of suspended animation, waiting for news that they all dreaded. The fire raged on, a monstrous living thing devouring their town, their homes, their pasts. Finally the wind shifted, and a blessed rain began to fall. The fire was contained, but the damage was done. An official list of destroyed properties was posted on a community bulletin board. Juniper Lane. Every single address was on the list. Ava stared at her own address, her vision blurring with tears. It was official. Everything was gone. The rocking chair, the photos, the chipped teacup, the clumsy clay bird. All of it reduced to ash and smoke. A profound, crushing emptiness settled over her, so heavy it felt hard to breathe. She was homeless. She owned nothing but her 10-year-old car, a traumatized dog, and the clothes on her back. That night, huddled in a blanket on her cot, a chill seeped deep into her bones. She remembered the denim jacket balled up in the back of her car. Retrieving it, she slipped it on, the familiar worn fabric a ghost of comfort. Her hands, seeking warmth, slid into the pockets. Her right hand brushed against a small, stiff piece of paper. Curiosity, faint and detached, stirred within her. She pulled it out, the Powerball ticket. A humorless, broken laugh escaped her lips. The universe had a sick sense of humor. What a cruel, meaningless joke. A ticket to a fantasy world, discovered amidst the smoking ruins of her real one. The dream of a different life, now that her actual life had been incinerated. She almost crumpled it up and threw it away, a final, defiant gesture against a fate that had taken so much. But something stopped her. An echo of Mr. Miller's cheerful "You never know." It was absurd, but it was all she had. A tangible link, however flimsy, to the world as it had been just a few days ago. The next morning she sat in the town library, one of the few public buildings left untouched on the outskirts of the fire zone. She used a public computer, the click of the mouse unnervingly loud in the somber silence. She navigated to the lottery website, her heart strangely calm. It didn't matter. This was just a motion to go through, a way to close a tiny, insignificant loop. She found the winning numbers from the Tuesday drawing. She looked at the ticket in her hand, then at the screen. 8, 14, 23, 45, 61. Her breath caught. A coincidence. It had to be. Her eyes moved to the last number, the Powerball. Powerball, 05. Ava stared at the screen. She checked the numbers again, and again. They swam before her eyes, refusing to change. Every single number on her ticket matched. A banner at the top of the page flashed the result. One winning ticket sold in Harmony Creek, Colorado. The jackpot was $187 million. The world around her dissolved. The quiet library, the hum of the computers, the smell of old books, it all faded into a deafening roar in her ears. She wasn't looking at a screen anymore. She was looking at a chasm, a dizzying, terrifying gap between the absolute ruin of her life and the impossible promise of a new one. Joy didn't come. Elation was nowhere to be found. Instead, a wave of vertigo washed over her, a profound and terrifying disorientation. She had lost everything, and she had just won everything. And in that moment, sitting in the ruins of her world, she had no idea which was which. For a long time, Ava just sat there, the world muted and distant. The winning numbers on the screen seemed to burn with a light of their own, a blinding beacon in the fog of her grief. She felt an overwhelming urge to run, to shove the ticket back in her pocket and pretend it never happened. This monumental, life-altering event felt like an intrusion, a grotesque mismatch with the raw, hollowed-out space in her chest where her life used to be. The lottery was a dream for people whose lives were intact. For her, it felt like a ghost, a specter of a future she had no foundation to build. How do you build a new life when the very ground beneath your feet has turned to ash? Her first coherent thought was one of utter secrecy. She folded the ticket carefully, her hands trembling, and tucked it deep into the zippered pocket of her jacket, the same pocket that had protected it from the flames. The gesture was instinctual, a primal need to shield this impossible secret from a world that already felt hostile and unpredictable. She logged out of the computer, walked out of the library in a daze, and drove aimlessly for an hour. The Rockies, a jagged, indifferent silhouette against the bruised purple of the twilight sky. Buster sat in the passenger seat, his head resting on her lap, his quiet presence the only anchor in the swirling vortex of her thoughts. The money wasn't real yet. To make it real, she had to take a step. The next morning, she drove toward what was left of Harmony Creek. The barricades were still up, but residents were being allowed in to survey the damage. The site was apocalyptic, a monochrome landscape of gray ash and blackened, skeletal trees stood where a vibrant community had once thrived. The air was thick with the ghost of smoke. As she passed the turnoff for Juniper Lane, a wave of nausea hit her, and she kept driving, unable to face the flattened ruin of her home. She parked in front of what remained of Miller's General Store. The front half was a charred shell, but miraculously, the back was relatively intact. A handwritten sign was taped to a piece of plywood covering the door. "We will rebuild. Be back soon." A flicker of movement caught her eye. Mr. Miller himself was there, sifting through the debris with a grim determination. He looked up as she approached, his face a mask of exhaustion. "Ava," he said, his voice raspy, "so sorry about your place. Heard we lost the whole lane." "I'm sorry about your store, Mr. Miller," she replied, the words feeling inadequate. "Just wood and nails." He sighed, though his eyes betrayed his heartbreak. "The towns, the people. We're still here." He gestured to a small, portable scanner he had set up on a makeshift table. "Power company got a generator running for us. Figured folks might want to check their tickets. Can't give you cash, but I can tell you if you want a free soda." His attempt at humor was so sad, so brave, that it almost broke her. Wordlessly, she pulled the ticket from her pocket and handed it to him. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment, the point of no return. He took it, his eyes crinkling in a sad smile. Chasing a miracle, eh? Can't blame you. We could all use one. He slid the ticket under the red light of the scanner. The machine, instead of its usual cheerful little chirp, emitted a long, high-pitched series of beeps, followed by a message on its tiny screen. Claim at lottery headquarters. Mr. Miller squinted at the screen, then at the ticket, then back at the screen. He scanned it again. The same sound, the same message. He looked up at Ava, his jaw slack, a slow dawning comprehension spreading across his face. He knew what that message meant. It was reserved for prizes too large for any retailer to handle. "Ava," he whispered, his voice trembling, Is this the one?" She couldn't speak. She just met his gaze and nodded, a single, terrifying confirmation. A tear traced a clean path through the soot on his cheek. He didn't cheer. He didn't shout. He simply reached across the table, took her hand in his own calloused ones, and squeezed. "Oh, my dear girl," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Maybe we did get our miracle." That night, Ava couldn't stay at the shelter. The weight of her secret was suffocating. She knew she needed to talk to someone who saw the town not just as a place, but as a living, breathing entity. She found Lim coordinating a supply distribution effort in a church parking lot. He was directing volunteers, his movements weary but efficient. When he saw her, he excused himself and walked over, his expression filled with concern. "You shouldn't be here, Ava," he said gently. "It's not good to see it all like this." "I needed to talk to you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She led him away from the bustle, to a quiet spot behind the church. There, under the cold, indifferent light of a single street lamp, she told him everything. She told him about the ticket, bought on a whim, about finding it in her jacket, about the scanner at Mr. Miller's store. He listened without interruption, his gaze steady and unreadable. When she finished, he was silent for a long time, looking out at the darkened, wounded town. $187 million, he finally said, the number sounding absurd in the desolate quiet. He shook his head slowly. "And you lost everything." He looked at her then, and for the first time, she saw the full depth of his empathy. He wasn't seeing a lottery winner. He was seeing a grieving neighbor. "I don't know what to do, Liam," she confessed, the dam of her composure finally breaking. The tears came, hot and silent. "It feels wrong. All this money, while everyone I know is nothing. My students lost their homes, their toys, their books. Mr. Miller's store is gone. How can I take this money? What am I supposed to do? Buy a mansion in another state and forget all of this?" Liam put a comforting hand on her arm. "No one would expect you to do that, Ava. No one who knows you." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "When you're fighting a fire this big, you feel helpless. You're just one person with one hose against a monster. You save what you can, one house at a time, but you always lose more than you save, and you pray for a game changer. A shift in the wind, a sudden downpour, something to give you a fighting chance." He turned to face her fully, his eyes earnest. "Ava, this money, it's not a prize. It's not a replacement for what you lost. Nothing can be. This is the rain. You're the game changer Harmony Creek was praying for." His words struck her with the force of a physical blow. "You're the rain." For days she had seen the money as a personal burden, a bizarre twist of fate that isolated her from her community in their shared grief. But Liam had given her a different lens. He had reframed it not as her salvation, but as the town's. The vertigo began to subside, replaced by a fragile, tentative sense of purpose. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of quiet, deliberate action. And following the advice of a lawyer she hired in Denver, Ava created a trust and claimed the prize anonymously through it. shielding herself from the inevitable media storm. She chose the lump sum payment, a staggering amount even after taxes. Her first act was not for herself. Through the newly established Harmony Creek Rebirth Fund, an anonymous donation was made to the town council, large enough to guarantee that every single first responder would receive a substantial bonus, and that their equipment would be upgraded to the best available. Her next move was more personal. She found Mr. Miller and, through a lawyer, presented him with a proposal, a grant to rebuild his store, bigger and better than before, with a new apartment for him and his wife above it. The only condition was that he hire local labor and stock goods from regional suppliers to help the local economy recover. He wept when he accepted. Ava, meanwhile, was living in a small, rented apartment one town over. She didn't buy a new car. She didn't buy designer clothes. She spent her evenings not browsing real estate websites, but drafting plans on her kitchen table. With Liam as her unofficial advisor, she mapped out the town's needs. They identified the families in the most desperate situations, the elderly, single-parent households, those without adequate insurance. The fund began issuing grants, anonymously, to help them get back on their feet, covering deposits for new apartments and providing money for basic necessities. One crisp autumn afternoon, Liam took her to the site of her old home on Juniper Lane. The debris had been cleared, leaving only a raw, empty plot of land. For the first time, she didn't feel the crushing weight of loss. She felt potential. "Are you going to rebuild?" Liam asked quietly. "I am," she said, a small smile touching her lips. "But not just this one." She looked at him, her vision clear for the first time since the fire. She saw a new Harmony Creek, a town with a state-of-the-art library and community center, a park with a new playground for the children, affordable housing built with fire-resistant materials for the families who had lost everything. She saw a future rising from the ashes, one built not on luck, but on resilience, community, and a second chance that had arrived in the pocket of an old denim jacket. She hadn't just won the lottery. She had found something far more valuable. In losing everything, she had been given the chance to rebuild everything, and in doing so, she had found her true home, not in a little blue house, but in the heart of the community she was helping to heal. The pine-scented air no longer tasted of just what was, but of everything that could be. True luck is not in the money you win, but in the resilience you discover in the ashes of adversity. Ava's story teaches us that when we lose everything we thought was important, we are forced to find our true worth in human connections, community strength, and the courage to rebuild a future from scratch. The lottery ticket was not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a deeper understanding of what it truly means to be rich. Did this story of hope inspire you? If so, subscribe to the channel and give this video a like to follow more journeys of transformation.